What happens when a white prosecutor humiliates a black teenager in court without realizing who he really is? What happened next shook the entire system to its core. In Tyrone Brooks's world, routine wasn't just comfort, it was survival. Every Saturday without fail, he cleaned the cloudy windows of old Mrs. Elsie's house on the corner of 6th and Broad. And every Sunday, he wore down the soles of his sneakers on the neighborhood basketball court until his legs begged for mercy. It wasn't about money or glory. It was about staying sane in a world where just being a young black man was seen as provocation. You didn't have to do anything wrong. Hell, sometimes just standing still made you a suspect. And God forbid you look too confident while breathing. It was a muggy Friday in late May. Lexington was sweating through its clothes, the sun hanging low, like it was too tired to keep burning, but too angry to leave. Tyrone, 16, 6 foot flat, skin smooth as polished wood, had just left the corner store with a carton of orange juice and a bag of chips. That's it. That's all he wanted. Juice, vitamin C, and peace of mind. Then he heard it. A weak, shaky voice rising over the dull throb of fluorescent lights inside the store. "Excuse me? Young man? Could you help me, please?" He turned to see a petite white woman, Mrs. Elsie, looking like a lost child in a football stadium. She'd wandered in circles down the aisles, clearly disoriented, clutching her purse like it held her last ounce of dignity. Her eyes were wide and watery, locked onto his. Tyrone didn't hesitate. "Ma'am, you okay?" he asked, stepping closer, voice soft. She explained she'd lost her way to the front desk, that everything looked the same, and her knees were about to give out. "Come on," he said, offering his arm. "Let's get you to the front." He guided her through the maze of canned goods and soda fridges, careful, respectful, like he was carrying something sacred. When they reached the security booth, she smiled with relief and tried to offer him 2 crumpled dollars. He shook his head. "I can't take that, ma'am. My mom says kindness ain't for sale." And just like that, bam, the story flipped. From behind one of the soda displays came a man whose job title clearly hadn't caught up with his power complex. White, stocky, wearing a security vest like it was military armor. His eyes zeroed in on Tyrone, jaw tight like he'd just been given permission to pounce. "Hey, what did you do to her?" Tyrone barely turned. "Nothing, sir. I just helped." "Hands up, now, or you're going to regret it." There it was. No time for truth. No room for grace. 1 minute you're a kid with manners, the next, you're a headline in the making. Before Tyrone could say another word, he was slammed against the sticky tile floor near the bread display, arms yanked behind him, orange juice rolling away like it didn't want to be part of this scene. His heart raced, but his mouth stayed shut, because where he was from, arguing just gave them a reason to press harder. One guard whispered, "Gotcha now, little thief." The other snickered, "Bet you thought you were some kind of hero, huh?" That night, he didn't sleep. The next either. His mom, Lavinia Brooks, single parent, backbone forged in struggle, ran from station to lawyer to courthouse like she was chasing something always one step ahead. The officers weren't interested in listening. The lawyers barely cared. And the public defenders? They looked tired before the case even started. The system had decided who Tyrone was. And spoiler alert, they didn't see a window-washing Good Samaritan. They saw a threat. Court day came fast and loud. The courthouse looked like every government building, cold, beige, and full of people who wore the same expression, bored indifference wrapped in polyester suits. Tyrone stood behind a wooden barrier, the defendant's box, which felt more like a cage than a place for truth. Everything around him screamed control, the high judge's bench towering like a throne, the stiff formality, the thick silence that only cracked when a white man in a tie opened his mouth. Enter Richard Malden, the prosecutor, the type of white man whose handshake probably came with a tax audit. Face like sour milk, voice like he practiced his outrage in the mirror. He stepped forward, puffed up like a turkey in mating season. "Your Honor," he began, "before you stands a youth with a pattern of concerning behavior. He was caught near a vulnerable elderly woman, and when approached, he resisted arrest. We have sworn statements from 3 security personnel." Then came the performance. Malden leaned toward the jury, paused like he was unveiling Shakespeare. This is not just a mistake, Your Honor. This is a pattern, an attitude. These kids think they can do what they want without consequence. He didn't say black kids, but come on. Everyone in that room heard it loud and clear, like a whisper with a megaphone. The judge, old, gray, worn like a public bench, nodded, half listening. He'd seen 1,000 Tyrone Brookses. They all blurred together eventually. Defense? The judge asked. Tyrone's court-appointed attorney, a pale woman who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else, fumbled her papers. Her voice trembled. We, would like to... Tyrone raised a hand. Your Honor, can I speak for myself? The room froze. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to flicker with surprise. You wish to represent yourself? The judge asked. Yes, sir, Tyrone said, straightening his back. I do. Are you sure? 100%. Proceed. Tyrone stepped out like he'd just dropped the weight of history off his shoulders. Shirt pressed, shoes clean, heart pounding like a drumline. He didn't flinch, didn't blink. He looked straight into the soul of that courtroom. Mrs. Elsie, the woman I helped, she's not a witness to a crime. She's a witness to kindness. I saw her struggling. I helped her. I didn't touch her purse. I didn't ask for money. I didn't steal anything. He paused. But the moment that guard saw me, a black teenager with a little height and some confidence, I became a threat, not because of what I did, because of what I looked like. Malden chuckled. Pretty speech, but you got any proof? Tyrone didn't flinch, reached into his pocket, pulled out a flash drive. This is store security footage. My mom's friend pulled the cloud copy before they deleted it. Funny thing about digital evidence, it doesn't vanish just because someone wants it to. The screen lit up. There it was, clear as Sunday morning. Tyrone gently helping Mrs. Elsie, her smile, his calm, their goodbye, no aggression, no crime, just a good deed in a world that didn't believe it was possible. The judge stared quiet. Then, as if fate knew it was time, the courtroom door creaked open. A clerk rushed to the judge, whispered something. The judge's face turned to stone. Repeat that. The clerk nodded. Sir, Tyrone Brooks, he's your son. Silence, not dramatic silence, nuclear silence. You could hear a pin drop. You could hear hearts stop. The judge blinked. Once, twice. He looked at Tyrone, and for the first time, he actually saw him. We're only getting started. What happens next changes everything. You don't want to miss how this unfolds. It took 1 second, one flash of a second, and the face of Judge Grayson, which until now looked like it was carved out of marble, finally moved. It cracked, not with rage or surprise, but with something deeper, older, like guilt thawing under the weight of truth. The kind of crack you hear in spring when frozen lakes finally give in to the heat, loud, ugly, and irreversible. Right beside him, still breathing heavy with the arrogance of someone who thought the room belonged to him, stood Prosecutor Richard Malden. That man looked like he was ready to deliver his closing blow. Sharp suit, sharpened tone, and that unmistakable glint in his eyes like he had just cornered another case, and another kid he thought couldn't fight back. What Malden didn't know, and wouldn't know until it was far too late, was that he hadn't just gone after a kid. He'd swung at the very foundation he stood on. This is absurd, Malden scoffed, his voice louder than it needed to be. Some kind of emotional theater. The boy's just playing the pity card. Judge Grayson didn't answer. Instead, the man stood, too quickly for his age, too suddenly for someone expected to be the calm in a courtroom storm. His gavel came down like thunder. The court is in recess for 10 minutes, he said coldly. Everyone out, except Prosecutor Malden. No raised voice, no drama, but the kind of calm that makes even grown men straighten their backs. The kind of calm you hear from a general when he's about to fire someone mid-battle. The room erupted in murmurs. Reporters whispered into phones. The gallery buzzed like someone had pulled the fire alarm. Lavinia Brooks clutched her chest, breath shaky. Lord help us, she murmured. But Tyrone didn't move. Not an inch. He just stood there, eyes locked, soul paused, like something ancient inside him was holding its breath. Back in the judge's chambers, the temperature dropped to freezing. Judge Grayson stood by the window, staring down at the courthouse parking lot like he expected the answers to life's mistakes to rise up from the asphalt. His face was hollow, like he'd just seen his own obituary and didn't like what it said. Malden, meanwhile, had the nerve, the full audacity, to keep going like he still had the upper hand. Sir, with the utmost respect, I think we're losing perspective here. This young man, he's clever, I'll give you that. Charming, maybe, but that doesn't change the facts. The judge turned around, slowly, like a man turning away from a long-held lie, and then his eyes, cold, small, focused, fixed on Malden. Facts, he said, low and deliberate. You call what I saw today facts? You mean the fabricated witness statements? The conveniently edited footage? The entire story you painted with the brush of your own bias? Malden's face tensed, but his voice held firm. We acted within the letter of the law. Grayson laughed. A dry, bitter thing. No joy in it, no humor. Just disappointment. The letter of the law? He repeated. You mean the version of the law that lets you yell at a boy like he's not even human? The one that tells you a black kid helping a white woman must be up to something? Malden started to speak, but the judge was already walking forward, closing the distance between them until they were nearly eye to eye, until the power imbalance that had ruled the courtroom flipped on its head. That boy, Grayson growled, is my son, Richard. My son. A child I didn't even know existed until 10 minutes ago. But you didn't even give him the benefit of a doubt. No questions, no curiosity, just a narrative you've played 100 times before. Malden's jaw dropped. His face turned the color of wet paper. I didn't know. That's exactly the problem, the judge snapped. You never want to know. You don't care enough to ask. Every black boy to you is either hiding something or running from something. But let me be clear. Even if he wasn't my son, you still would have been wrong. You still would have lost. Then came the paper. The judge laid it flat on the desk. You're relieved from this case, effective immediately. Go back to your office, and don't speak another word. Tyrone sat on a hard wooden bench just outside the courtroom, elbows on his knees, fingers laced. Lavinia sat beside him, eyes full of emotions she hadn't let out yet. You knew it was him? She asked softly. Tyrone shook his head. Number I didn't have his name, didn't have anything. I thought maybe he was dead, or maybe he just decided I wasn't worth knowing. She reached over, squeezed his hand. I wanted to tell you, but how do you tell your son that the man in the black robe calling him a suspect is the same man who helped bring him into this world? Tyrone exhaled, deeply, the kind of breath that tries to carry years of silence out with it. So now he knows. He does. How'd he react? He didn't say anything, but there was something in his eyes. Hurt, and maybe shame. Tyrone smirked, just a little. Good. At least one of them felt something today. Then after a pause, but look, I don't need a father. I need justice. And I'm not about to let one DNA test change how I feel about this system, even if its face turns out to look like mine. Back inside the courtroom, the crowd returned. But they weren't the same. They were quieter, tenser, like the air itself had thickened, like the whole room realized it had misjudged what kind of story they were watching. Judge Grayson entered alone. He sat, adjusted his robe, and then spoke. We will proceed, he said. Prosecutor Malden is no longer with this case. A neutral legal representative will be appointed in his place. In the meantime, we'll review the full evidence submitted by the defendant. He nodded toward the screen. This time no one looked away. The footage played again. Tyrone walking slowly beside Mrs. Elsie, carrying her bag, arm outstretched to support her. She laughed. He smiled. No fear, no confusion. Just two people, doing something decent in a world that had forgotten what decency looked like. When it ended, silence returned. But then, a voice from the back. Soft but clear, cracking through the tension like a spotlight. Anyone gonna thank him? All eyes turned. Mrs. Elsie, petite, glasses glinting, standing strong with her cane, but with a voice that could level a building. I know that boy, she said. He helped me. Didn't touch my purse. Didn't ask for anything. And these guards, they lied. One of them even came to apologize this morning. The rest disappeared. Do what you will, but I'm standing with him. Judge Grayson let out a breath, long, heavy. Then finally, he looked at Tyrone. Really looked. And for the first time, he didn't see a case file. He saw a young man, a son, and a truth he couldn't ignore. This court finds insufficient grounds for continuing prosecution, he said. All charges are dropped, pending full investigation of procedural misconduct. The defendant is released, effective immediately. And only then did Tyrone finally breathe. Not like someone catching their breath after a run, but like a man coming up from water. Like someone who'd been drowning in silence and just found the surface. This is the turning point. Everything you've waited for, it's happening now. Stay with the story and watch how Tyrone flips the script on the system that tried to crush him. The courtroom was dark now. The seats, once filled with eyes and whispers, were empty. The floor still held the echo of hard shoes and harder words. But up at the bench sat one man, alone. Judge Grayson. No robe, no gavel. Just him, the dim exit light above the doors, and an old photograph in his hand. It wasn't one of those polished portraits that hang in city buildings. This was raw, faded edges, curled corners. A young man holding a baby, smiling like he hadn't yet tasted the bitterness of life's compromises. Back then, he didn't know who the child was. And now he knew. And the weight of that knowing, it wasn't quiet. It slapped like cold wind on warm skin. It hit like truth always does, sharp, sudden, and with no room to hide. Meanwhile, across town, Tyrone Brooks was walking down the courthouse steps. He didn't strut. He didn't shrink. He walked like someone who had walked through fire barefoot and lived to talk about it. People watched, some with curiosity, some with pride, a few with that look, the one that burns holes in your back, the one that says you don't belong. Tyrone didn't care. His mother caught up to him halfway down the steps. She wasn't crying anymore, but her breath still trembled. "How you holding up?" she asked. He looked at her, calm on the outside, volcanic on the inside. "Honestly," he said, "I want ice cream and silence, a whole lot of silence." She chuckled, though her eyes stayed wet. And they walked. Because freedom, real freedom, isn't walking out of a courtroom. It's walking down the street and not hearing whispers trail behind you. It's not being followed in a store. It's not seeing the world flinch just because you exist. But that day, even after everything, Tyrone still heard the whispers. In every step, in every shadow. The next day, the unthinkable happened. Judge Grayson came to their home. No driver, no press, no badge of honor, just him, no robe, no armor, no tie. Lavinia opened the door. Her face said more than any words could. "Can I come in?" he asked, voice low. She didn't answer right away, just looked at him, long, heavy. "Now you're asking me for something," she said, "after 16 years of nothing?" He nodded, not defensive, not ashamed, just real. She stepped aside. "Let him in." Tyrone was sitting on the couch, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. When the man, his biological father in technical terms, walked in, Tyrone didn't stand, didn't offer a hand, just said flat, "Well, welcome." Grayson sat slowly, like the couch itself was judging him, like he was lowering himself into a memory he didn't earn. "I'm not here to defend myself," he began. "I didn't know, but now I do, and I want to try and do right by that, if you'll allow me." "Allow you?" Tyrone laughed, dry. "You forgot about us. You forgot about her. And now you want permission?" Grayson dropped his gaze. "I deserve everything you feel. I came not to demand, but to offer. A conversation, the truth. Anything you want to ask." Tyrone didn't flinch. "Then tell me," he said. Tell me what it's like to build a career off broken families, to sentence boys without ever seeing them, to almost bury your own son with a speech about troublemakers and attitudes." Grayson's mouth didn't move for a while, but eventually the words came. He spoke about numbers, about pressure, about how justice sometimes got lost in the shuffle of schedules and summaries. He talked about how he started with good intentions and how the years blurred the faces until only case files remained. It was honest. It was ugly. When he finished, Tyrone said, "That was a nice speech. But you know what stuck with me? That moment I was standing in chains, and you didn't even look at me. You didn't recognize your own blood because you weren't looking for a person. You were looking for a threat." Grayson nodded, silent, defeated. "That has to change," he said. "Not just for you, for everyone." 1 week later, the world changed a little. There was a press conference held at City Hall. Reporters packed the room like bees in a jar. Flashes, cameras, whispers. At the podium stood Judge Grayson. For the first time in 20 years, the presiding judge of Lexington voluntarily requested temporary suspension, not because of a scandal, but because of conscience. He called for a full audit of his court's rulings over the past decade, specifically those involving black youth. And next to him stood Tyrone Brooks. He wore a suit from a thrift store, slightly oversized, but he wore it with posture that made even seasoned journalists straighten their spines. His voice was clear, controlled, like someone who'd been silenced long enough and knew the weight of finally being heard. "My name is Tyrone Brooks," he said, "and I almost became a statistic, not because I did anything wrong, but because someone with power assumed they already knew my story." He didn't read from a script. His truth didn't need help. "My father's a judge," he said, "but today that doesn't matter. What matters is that most kids like me don't have that coincidence. Their fathers aren't judges, their mothers aren't warriors, and they're paying a price for simply existing in the wrong skin." The room was silent when he finished. Later, in an interview with a local paper, a reporter asked him, "What do you feel toward your father?" Tyrone thought for a while, not just seconds, long enough to dig past the surface. "I don't owe him forgiveness," he said finally, "but I do owe the truth. And if he's willing to use his position to protect other boys from what nearly happened to me, then maybe, just maybe, he'll start to understand what it means to be a father. Not just to me, but to all the sons this system tries to forget." And Prosecutor Malden? Gone. Quietly dismissed. No headlines. No statements. Just a vacancy and a lesson he never saw coming. The real danger that day wasn't the boy in the courtroom. It was the man who thought he already knew him. As for Tyrone, he enrolled in college, political science and law, not to become a judge, but to become a voice. For those without evidence, without names, without fathers in high places, just truth and the fire to speak it. So if you've made it this far, let this stay with you. This isn't a story about a lucky break. This is a story about a system that almost consumed its own child, and how that child stood up, stared it down, and made it look in the mirror. Not with rage, not with fear, but with truth. That kind of truth that doesn't whisper. It echoes forever.